Hello to everyone who tuned in to watch today's episode. I'm doing an introduction to the show that we're doing today. I'm adding this into the beginning to explain a couple of things. First of all, yes, Echoes of Isolation is still what this channel is called because that is the flagship product that I'm really working under. All the stuff that I'm doing is going to be under that umbrella. I'm going to do readings from that book as well as from my newer book that I also have out. Then this also includes partnerships with other creators. So I'm going to do interviews with other people. Today, I'm doing an interview with a friend of mine, and when this is all finished, when all the editing is done, I'm going to produce this video, post it up on my channel, as well as give him a copy so he can post the entire thing on his channel as well, unedited. So if you happen to be watching this on his channel, that's the explanation for that. So, having said all that, it's time to get on with the show. Cue the guitar music. Hello everyone out there, and I'm not going to call this YouTube land anymore. I've decided that now because this is going to other places other than just YouTube. This is also going out as audio. So if you're listening on Spotify, you're probably not seeing what is happening here right now is that I'm not sitting in the normal spot. I'm not sitting in front of my normal camera. I'm sitting with somebody else. The reason that we're doing this like this today is because I have a guest on the show today. I am not sitting here by myself because I'm actually going to interview my friend Art. This is Arthur Doherty. I pronounced your last name correctly, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Doherty,
great.
yeah.
Arthur is Art, as we like to call him. He is a sound producer. He is a former roadie guy. He is a musician himself. And he's also an author, which is actually why he's here today, because he's going to talk about his book. He's going to talk about his experience with writing. Really, I'd like to really give like a much more full introduction for that sort of thing, and perhaps I will come back at another point and add a little bit more to that. But I mean, I was just joking with him a few minutes ago before we started doing this recording that this kind of reminds me of the old public access cable channels they used to do. That's kind of what we're doing nowadays. Anybody with a camera can film stuff and put it up, and it's really up to us now to promote it and see if we can actually get anybody to watch it and maybe tell their friends about it. Hit the subscribe button down below. I'm pointing as if you can see it from here, but you're going to have to look on your screen to see that. So anyway, to get on started with this, hello Art.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you.
So
Fun with flags.
you are not the first person to make that joke. That was my wife made that joke. She's like, "Oh, you're going to record with Art. You guys are going to do fun with flags." Yeah. Yes, we are.
Yeah.
So
Moving forward.
yes. So what I wanted to talk about was you have written a book before I wrote a book, and what I wanted to hear firsthand from you was what was it that got you started with that? What was it that made you think one day I should write a book?
I've always thought about writing a book. It kind of goes back to my early high school, pre-high school days. I used to be a nerdy D&D guy, and I liked being the dungeon master. So I created.
Oh, so you were writing all of this stuff,
Exactly.
not just playing.
You're right. I learned playing with people. Or being a character. Then I went on DMing because being a fan of Tolkien, I really like the idea of building worlds and the backstory behind this world and mythologies and all that stuff. So fast forward. I do a lot of digital art, so I decided to do a series because I was bored. I didn't have any ideas what to do, and I came up with the idea of doing some dragon portraits, sort of loosely based on the old D&D stuff. So as I made the pictures, I'd make a little blurb about the dragon. Then by the time I got to like the third or fourth one, the blurbs became like multiple paragraphs, and next thing you know, I had a whole story written.
When you're developing artwork, sometimes you can look at the final piece and say, "Oh, there's a whole story to this."
I'm totally like that. I mean, I'll sometimes just make an image, and then I see the story, what's going on behind there, and sometimes I will make an image, based on some kind of story. But these started off as images that developed into a much larger creation. So that was like about 2010, something like that. After having written all of that, I wrote the equivalent of about 4 books that were all posted on my DeviantArt site. I have a page on DeviantArt.
There will be links for this stuff.
Right. And but I took it down from there because I was like, well, if I'm going to write the book, I can't have it up here. Like, so what I've been doing, the first book was kind of cobbled together with essays and stuff I put together, but the 3 others after it were fully formed and written as books rather than trying to put together images and different stories and finding stuff to tie them all together. So after book 1, I find everything's a lot more cohesive. So I'm at a point now where they're in first drafts, and I got to start.
You can hold up your book there so everyone can see what it is that we're talking about. This is Tales from Urath.
Of Dragons and Drakes. It's more of an introduction to the world. It introduces some characters that do move on through the story and introduces some basic ideas and not. But it's more of looking at it now, it's more of an intro to the next series.
This is a good segue into one thing that I wanted to ask about. People, I can't remember how many times people have asked me, why don't you ever write anything that's fiction-wise? Actually, the reason for that is that no one's ever actually asked me that. But I'm going to answer that question anyway. I mean, for me, one of the reasons that I have a problem with writing fiction is that I can't distance myself far enough from what I'm writing to where I don't feel like what I'm writing is so obviously derivative. And when I mean derivative, I mean based on somebody that I know already, or
I understand
something like that.
Yeah.
So my question to you would be, how do you go about writing a character and making sure that your brother doesn't walk up to you afterward and go, "That's me, isn't it?"
Well, luckily, that's a really hard one to answer because sometimes the characters develop out of, they start to write themselves. I have an idea of where this character needs to go to, maybe show off this other character. Then as it goes back and forth, the personalities of both of them start to develop. And sometimes, I can't deny that not so much people around me, but sometimes characters from movies or other books or TV have a slight influence. Like, I like the way that guy's attitude is, but it's a little bit too much like this, and I'll,
And you never
spin my own.
You never afterward worry that somebody's going to read that and go, "Oh man, is Stephen King ever reads that? He's going to realize I just stole that character from him."
No, nothing like that. I'd say that it's hard to write any kind of fantasy novel without nodding your head to Tolkien.
Yeah, right.
I'm a huge Tolkien fan.
I think just about every fantasy writer in the world would already agree with that.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like I have to kind of move past that and just develop my world as I see it, and mine's definitely not an imitation.
One of the comments that I had about your book when I read it was that there were some original ideas, at least in terms of dragon lore, that I hadn't seen before. And it's not like I've got like a stack of books this high that I've read that were dragon wise, but I have read my Tolkien. I've read my Dragon Riders of Herne. So I mean, I've been through a number of different types of stories, types of universes that had those kinds of characters, and yours still had some ideas that I hadn't seen before.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's still possible.
Yeah.
For all you out there that are paying attention, it's still possible to do that kind of thing. Not everything needs to be derivative. Thank goodness for that. I haven't figured out a way to do it myself, but there's some good pointers there for anybody who's interested. Hopefully you pick up something from that. So I think this is probably a good time for you to take a break from this and do a little reading from your book, so everyone can get a little bit of an idea of what it is that we're talking about here.
All right, I can do a little setup. I confess I'm not happy with my voice reading from my book, so I used AI to read it for me, but through the reading, it should be very clear. The guy is very articulate, and there'll be a few images to accompany it. The chapter is from the middle of the book and involves the 2 main antagonists, a large storm dragon named Hadron Khan and this half-elven warrior mage named Lyra. These two have teamed up, and there's a distrust. You'll see in the chapter, it finally comes out that there's, despite having teamed up, there's a distrust, and each one thinks it's using the other to get to their goals. But at this point, they're both looking for at least one of the 9 pearls of wisdom that are part of draconic lore in this universe.
All right.
And in this one, in this one, they have found one of the pearls, and Alira's half brother, a warrior monk, is who she has to face to take the pearl.
See, I read the book, so I know what happens. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that then.
Alirazel is a powerful mage. Hadron was a fast learner. Yet he did not have Alira's command of magic. Alira is the enemy of all good in the world, and her goal is to rule all Urath and then destroy it, and move on to the next world. That is how deep her hate runs and how disassociated with reality she has become. When she got a taste of what she could have as one of the mistresses of the elements, her mind truly twisted. Right now, all her magic was amplified, and required less personal energy as she tapped into the elements of the world around her. It is too bad the Mistress of the Rock did not see Alira as she truly is. Or did she? Either way, Alira and her half-sister Alchemia now shared some of the power of the sisterhood, and both chose to use if for self-indulgent reasons. In the end, the power they were partially granted will be stripped of them when time is up, and they do not achieve their goals to enter an alliance with the balance. The women were warned of this, but their arrogance has made them deaf. Alira was determined to find the pearls, and Alchemia was aligned with her, and now so was this mysterious storm dragon. It did not take long for Alira to figure out exactly what Hadron was, given his backstory and general appearance. He did look like a storm drake, but certain physical attributes and even attitude belied a mix of something else. Lone storm dragons are not known to exist. They live in communal tribes and usually travel in pairs or more. Alira formed a plan to help her new ally when it came time for his next molting, which she thought would be as soon as this winter. His heritage required special attention, and should he survive this next molting, his power could serve her well. Once gaining a pearl, she could use it to control Hadron whenever she wanted, but decided he might be more useful if he felt he had his own free will. If he became defiant, then she could use the pearl. First, all she needed was a pearl. Ironically, one had been right under her nose for many years, and she had unknowingly been one of its guardians. Alira rode atop Hadron's shoulders as they approached a small town in the night. The town was named Mao Shin and was home to the monks of Mao Shin, an order Alira and her half-brother belonged to. The name was in honor of the celestial dragon Mao Shin, who these monks honored. With Alira riding atop Hadron's shoulders, the two combined their powers and summoned a great storm. It was a deadly storm that would not release the rain, but instead rained lightning as they soared in from the even darker sky. They landed on the domed roof of the town's main hall. Hadron released a mighty bolt of energy from his gaping maw that tore through several buildings and homes at the town's border. Alira drew one of her swords and shouted in delight. She leaped from the roof and landed on the street 3 stories below, only barely bending her knees to absorb the shock as she landed. She moved forward down the street, casting bolts from her hands, or scything down foolish guards or innocent citizens, trying to escape and just destroying all in sight. People ran and people died. Alira's goal was to find the monks, not the peasants. There was mounting dead in the street and others fleeing. Bloody bodies missing a limb or two, charred and smoking bodies from the summoned lightning, which was finally dissipating, were scattered about the street. Hadron spread his wings and roared as he descended to the street level. His spiked mace-like tail destroyed a few more structures during his descent. When he landed, he released a second bolt of energy into the heart of town at a large temple that exploded in fiery red and blue light. Alyra continued forward towards the center of town on the main street. However, before even getting that far, she came closer to a grassy ring with an obelisk-type pedestal in the middle under a medium, tall red maple. The tree and pedestal cast strange flickering and dancing shadows due to the various fires and the last few streetlights. The ring was probably only 40 feet across and the pedestal chest high. The tree was probably 50 feet high with the lowest branches about 8 feet off the ground. The pedestal was carved stone that simply had the name of the town on it carved in relief. The tree was native to Neuvollen and attested to the monks' origins from that country to the west. Alyra stopped about 50 yards from the small monument. She felt them and drew her other sword. Her eyes snapped back and forth and up and down. Her senses reached out. Without warning, a group of monks dashed out of the shadows wielding all manner of weapons. They formed an open-bottom triangle and 2 lines behind that to form something of an arrow shape, then paused in battle-ready stances. These were monks of the teachings and culture of Neuvollen, not the patronizing brewmakers who preached of hypocritical good over self-righteous evil. These were warrior monks dedicated to the art of battle, peace, and dedication to their pledge. Usually a pledge to one divine or another. These monks were dedicated to Mao Shin, and by proxy, to the Grand Father, their charge being to guard one of the 9 pearls of wisdom. Hadrian saw the monks emerge and reflexively gave a loud rumble and lurched forward. Alyra held a hand up to the dragon, telling him not interfere. The dragon paused, then simply smiled and sat back to watch. She was the best warrior known, and was happy to use her magic to further enhance any advantage. Alyra moved forward, and within a few moments the monks charged at her. They changed patterns and forms as they came at her. Some of the fighting forms and formations were new to her, but many she already knew well from her pastime with the monks, and others she could see were derived from forms and moves she had long mastered. The monks grunted and shouted as they attacked, while Alyra, in near silence, made her way down the street, killing all the monks along the way. Her body in constant motion and swords scything everything down. She flipped, slid, dodged, parried, and stabbed. A little telekinesis here, and static force shield there, and by the time she got halfway to the pedestal, all the monks were down. Some of the best fighters around, and only a few of them scratched her. She counted 19 monks, which meant 2 left, and 1 would be on his way to their master, Mao Shin. Hadrian was quite amused, and at the same time a bit repulsed. He thought a moment that she was excessive and could be out of control. That was the part of him that understood the need for some order. However, another part of him enjoyed the freedom and the chaos. He rose and followed her, thinking how useful she has been. He now even better understood how dangerous she could be, and expected betrayal from her. He knew well the codes of partners, and reconsidered his original plan. He would have to keep a close eye on her. An alliance might work, but she was rather unpredictable. At that moment, the last monk of Mao Shin stepped from the shifting shadows of the monument into the ruddy light with strange reds reflecting from low dark clouds. The whole scene was lit by a rising moon, partially covered by moving clouds and fires burning everywhere. A portion of the sky was clearing as the summoned storm disappeared, letting real rain clouds roll in. Alyra slowed when she saw the monk, then continued forward, the burning light looking hellish on her blood-drenched body. She knew magic spells would not work on this monk. She was fine with swords. He brandished 2 sabers that looked quite similar to her own. There was no talk. She came forward, and the fight was engaged. There was a blur of movement and white and red flashing of steel, and it was over in less than a minute. With a blade in his chest and him missing 1 arm, he looked at her. His face showed more sorrow and pity, rather than anything else. Alyra sneered and snarled, then spat into a face that had strange similarities to her own, and with a hiss said, "Goodbye, brother," and yanked out her sword. The man she called brother made a short gasp as blood pumped from his chest, then fell to the slick stone-cobbled street. He had fought well and managed to wound her in her side, and now she was exhausted. But the excitement of what she was about to take control of sent more energy through her body that she could not think of resting. This was a moment of truth. The moon began to flicker in and out as the sky clouded up again and a real storm came in, quite possibly as a result of the summoned weather. One could smell a strong tingling in the air. Alira rested a moment and waited for the first drops. She sheathed her swords and centered herself, and soon the rain came and quelled some of the fires and washed some of the blood from her body and armor. She had a nasty bruise and cut in her right side, but that would heal easily when they got back to the tower. Hadrian simply watched and waited. She had the key to retrieve the pearl, and he was patient. When composed, she made the rest of the walk to the small structure to retrieve her prize, one of the mythic pearls of wisdom. She smiled to herself, thinking of how she outsmarted the great Shin and his minions. She knew it would not be long before the grandfather and the grandmother would be looking for her.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed that. So now we're back here to continue the discussion that we were having before, and now is a good time to ask the next question that I had. And I see a lot of questions come across question and answer sites like Quora.com. If you haven't seen that site before, you might want to go and check it out, because there's a lot of good information, a lot of good exchange back and forth with people who do a lot of writing back and forth to explain a lot of things to each other. It's a question and answer site. But many things that come up there talk about publishing. How do you go about getting published? How do you go about doing that the right way? How do you go about doing the editing on your book? And Art was actually the first person that I spoke to about this, because I knew Art had already had his book published. So I said, all right, how am I supposed to get started with this? So I posed that question to Art now. Like, how did you go about finding your method of doing this? How did you get this all worked out? What are your plans going forward?
Always fluid. It's really started with making our first CD. My brother and I, we went through a place, it's called CD Baby. They have an affiliate that's called Book Baby. And having worked with CD Baby, I kind of focused in on just, all right, I'll go with Book Baby. But there are other publishers, self-publishing routes out there. So with CD Baby, the whole idea was they're going to put it on their website. They have association with, you might have to edit this now. What's the big book guy? Is it Barnes & Noble?
Barnes & Noble is one.
Yeah. Barnes & Noble and Amazon, and when you publish your book through Book Baby, they automatically put you through a whole bunch of other outlets and stuff. So that said, if you want reviews, you have to hope people buy it, or you got to start going to review sites, looking up people who review books. Some you have to pay for, some will do it for free. So publishing with Book Baby was the first step. Following that, after noodling around, I found Goodreads, BookBub, the Writer's Commentary. A very big one that's well known in New York is called Kirkus Reviews. They have a newsletter they send out to agents and publishers like every month. So if you get your book in there, you have a chance of connecting with other people. They give you a full review. And that's kind of the stage I'm still at now. I got a bunch of great reviews. I just need more people to pick it up. But one thing I will add is that the best thing you can do beyond paying for publishing and all that is do another book, do another third book. Keep putting some books out there. The more people see that, oh, this author doesn't just have this one-off thing, they have all this stuff too. Let me go check it out, since he or she has all this stuff out there.
By the way, speaking of second books, this is something I actually want to tell everybody who's watching this about, is that this book now, this is my second book, because I decided to write another one. I had so much fun doing the first one. And I already did a reading from this right around the time that I can't actually say the words out loud without getting sued. You know, that big football game they play every year.
Oh, yeah, right.
So I did a couple of readings from that, but I'm actually going to do that book. I'm going to read that in its entirety, and I'm publishing that to this channel at some point. That's going to take a little time, though. Continuing along, you said you had a question for me.
Yeah, I mean, you had this whole journal as it was that you wrote during the time of COVID. What inspired you now? Like, what about the timing now? Why would you think now is a good time to release stories about COVID?
You know, that's an interesting question, and the reason for that is that
Is it too soon?
Yeah, I've gotten some people that said, "Man, we just got over that. I don't want to relive it again." So yeah, to some people, they do think that it's too soon. For me, what really happened was that there was always a little bit of discussion in the background that maybe I should put that thing together as a full published book someday, partly because I kind of want people who weren't alive during this time, and I say this time because it's really not over yet.
No.
But I want people to be able to go back and read an actual first-person historical account of what actually happened in those days, even if it is something as mundane as building a puzzle, because we did that, or as mundane as like the first time driving out, you know, to go to pick up food in a restaurant. You know, if you didn't actually live that for yourself, it's kind of hard to actually understand just how really weird that was.
Yeah, I can relate totally. Yeah.
And everybody who I opened up the book when I said it, that anybody who's alive today that's old enough to read this thing already has their own story. I'm well aware of that, but this is mine, and I still think that there's enough in there that's unique to my personal part of it that other people can still relate to, and even if they can't, they might find it interesting. And it was some of the stuff about like when we got new kittens. Like I'm reading this stuff, you know, 4 years after it was you know, written down, and I hadn't gone back myself to look at it in all that time. And when I did, I actually kind of found myself entertained by it a little bit. So I said, now probably is a good time to actually do this, and so I did.
Well, I would even add that releasing it now is a good thing on one level. It's still fresh, more or less, to you. It's still fresh to a lot of people who are still around. But the thing is that kind of story, specifically about COVID and all that you could read again in 10 years. And just like you're saying, people that did not live through it who read this will be like, wow, I'm glad I wasn't around then.
Yeah, and it's
20 years from now.
It's written someplace in the book, and I'll say it out loud now. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to having grandchildren, because there's going to come a day that I'm going to sit down with the grandchildren and go, let me put my teeth in and tell you about, the time of COVID.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and I'm sure my kids are going to be standing there and going, humor your grandfather, he's old and he likes to tell stories. I'm sure that's going to happen. I'm already looking forward to that day.
Excellent.
Really, the first time that I get to tell a story to somebody who was not alive during this time and they're old enough to actually appreciate it, that's going to be a banner day.
Right.
I'm like, oh, sit down and get comfortable. This is going to take a while.
Wait till you hear this.
Like, you don't know. This is probably a good place to wrap this up for the day. This has been an interesting conversation. And, you know, this is something I was talking to Art about before, and I think I'm going to go ahead and say it out loud now, is that I think that there are other authors out there like myself, like Art, that would like to be able to get some, you know, they'd like to be able to get a chance themselves to get on a channel like this and talk about their material. Maybe they haven't got the outlet, maybe they don't have the equipment, maybe they don't have the confidence to sit in front of the camera and talk about it on their own, but they're looking for an outlet. They'd like to be able to get out and do some promotion like this for themselves. And for that, my contact information is down in the description below, and contact me. Perhaps we can talk to you about you coming on this channel and interview you about your project. We'll talk about that later. For now, thank you very much for watching. Please hit the subscribe button, tell your friends about it, tell anybody that you think might be interested. Art, is there anything else that you would like to say?
I just say this has been great. Thank you for the opportunity, and like you said, check out the books.
There will be links to Art's material as well as my own material in the description below. Thank you very much. Enjoy.